Hello, this is Miss Andrea. I heard my husband talking to a friend today about their child who was struggling in COVID school. And the child is getting depressed, the child is sobbing, and the child thinks the child is stupid. And this child wasn't having problems with school before. So what's the problem? According to the Texas Tribune, Texas families say remote learning isn't working and they want it fixed. The passage that stood out to me the most was, frustration hits home. The stress and lack of preparation teachers experience trickles down to students and parents. Parents and guardians told the Tribune that teachers have often not made clear to them which class assignments are required and which are just suggestions. Sometimes parents tell their children not to bother completing assigned work at all, worry the stress will overwhelm them and have long-term effects. Candace Hunter's daughter Hezekiah, who was 11, used to love school as a straight A student. Now she is inundated with mundane assignments from multiple classes, leaving her despondently working into the evening to clear the backlogs. The sixth grader at Austin ISD's Lamar Fine Arts Academy asked her mom if she can stay out of school. So this is something that I've been talking about for years. Back when, a lot of people started homeschooling, the schools wanted some of that action and opened all these online public school at home schools. And what I noticed was happening was that they were like, okay, so if you spend an hour with a teacher, cool, we'll take that hour. And when we put it electronically, when we are giving out assignments, since you're missing that FaceTime with the teacher, we're going to turn that hour into 2 hours. So FaceTime with the teacher is 1 hour, but computer time is 2 hours. So when you switch from in-person school to electronic school, the public school system has decided that you have to work twice as long. This is what's happening. This is why kids are crashing and burning, because they have doubled the workload. It says remote learning is a disaster and terrible for children. At every pediatrician appointment for the last several years, I've been asked about how much screen time my kids are getting. I'm reminded by the doctor that the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends children younger than 2 avoid digital media other than video chatting, and for children ages 2 to 5, the limit is supposed to be 1 hour of high-quality children's programming per day. So what we're doing now is we're taking kids who aren't mature enough for screen time and sitting them in front of a computer for hours on end. Personally, when I traditionally homeschool a kid, I give them screen time, but it's about an hour or 2, under age 10. They get all their basics done in that amount of time, and then they're off cutting and coloring and, doing crafts. This says here, in countless homeschooling Facebook groups I'm a member of, we see new arrivals asking for guidance on when to begin homeschooling. Every single day I see these, every single day. These exasperated parents explain they're pulling the plug on distance learning because their kids simply can't handle it. Friends post pictures of their children curled in a ball, facing away from the desk after several hours. Others describe screaming, sobbing, and outbursts after children as young as 5 are left feeling fried after being expected to stay engaged 6 hours a day online. It's just too much. But let me say this. If you are planning to pull your kids from school and homeschool them, I caution you against ripping them out and starting homeschooling unless you plan to continue doing it. If your plan is to homeschool on your own steam, and then put them back in school the second school's open, you've derailed the whole school year. I made a video recently and I said, you know, if that's the deal, hire a tutor. If that's the deal, meet with a teacher and say, this is what we're doing, this is what we're not doing, and these are the grades I expect my kids to get. Because I will go to court over this. Like, you have to advocate in a helicoptery way to get your kids what they need while demonstrating to the school that your kid is learning. Now, I'm all for homeschooling. I want more people to homeschool. I think children grow up less stressed when they homeschool, at least for a few years. At the same time, you can't homeschool and then public school and then homeschool and then public school. You lose too much time, you lose continuity, and the children suffer for it. Meanwhile, school wasn't so great before COVID either, The Atlantic says. We know the pandemic has created or exacerbated mental health problems for many children. But what's less appreciated is that pre-pandemic schooling was already contributing to such problems. One large study from this year found that students reported feeling less happy while at school than in any other location. Another found that emergency psychiatric visits between 2009 and 2012 more than doubled when school was in session compared with during the summer and vacations. While the adult suicide rate has historically peaked in summer, the recent increase in youth suicides has shown the opposite pattern, with suicides dropping off in the summer and climbing when kids are back in school. Researchers have found that elementary school students' levels of stress hormone cortisol become elevated during the school year. Here's the thing. Schools have missed an opportunity. Schools have missed an opportunity to truly engage students in a dynamic way. Resources are so vast, but instead they're still teaching as if a child is in a classroom. Teachers should be using dynamic websites for individualized learning that lets each child go at their own pace, but they still have all these kids across the multiverse all learning at the same thing, the same time together, and that's just not realistic in any type of real world situation. Last paragraph. Ever since it became clear last spring that school closures would be protracted, we've heard an outpouring of concern about potential learning loss and other serious costs for kids, including undetected child abuse and hunger. For a sizable fraction of children with those disabilities whose educational needs can't be met remotely, and the millions of kids eligible for free or reduced price lunch who weren't fed during the spring and summer, that concern has obvious merit. Students will suffer an average of 7 months of learning loss. In essence, they'll be 7 months behind in mastering certain concepts and skills. Latino and Black students will fall a little further behind, McKinsey found, and low-income students will lose more than a year. A report out of the Brookings Institution in the spring projected that an extended break from in-person school could cause a COVID slide, in which 3rd to 8th grade students could lose a substantial portion of the progress they would have expected to make in math and reading. In a perfect world, and I've said this before, when COVID happened and schools had to close, we would have just all homeschooled. But this is not a perfect world, and not everyone has the funds to allow a parent to stay home with the kids. Not everyone has the education that it takes to educate children. Not everyone has the passion to do it. But we've just missed so much good opportunity where teachers could have been doing more dynamic lessons, using online animated lectures, using interactive websites that let children learn math at their own pace. Like, if I was in charge of all schools, which I'm not, this past year would have handed the students back over to their parents and offered them tutoring. Like, they would have been like, this is what you might want to take care of. Here's some tutor options if you want them, because all these teachers and all these subs could be tutoring, and like maybe having access to 4 or 5 kids instead of 30 kids. Do you know what I mean? At a time. And the children as individuals would be better off, because when you look at the way schools are made, one teacher is teaching to a class of 30 kids, and there are kids, you know, at the top and bottom of abilities that are getting overlooked, left out, not getting what they need. We had an opportunity to restructure things, even for a year, that would allow an experiment of children to learn at their own pace. And what would have happened when we went back and say a year to 18 months is that children would test either at grade level or above, and they would accelerate those children that, you know, went above, and they would remediate those children that fell a little below. But I don't think anyone would have crashed and burned. I'd love to just retool education as it stands, because I don't think like your average homeschooler. I'm much more stringent, but I don't think like a public school person either. Like, that's more stress than necessary to get the results that you want. So I hope this video makes sense. Till next time.